Welcome to the Stick 'em Up podcast. This is our inaugural episode. I'm your host, Braden, here with my co-host and brother, Brandon.
What's going on?
Should we get out of the way and explain Burundi right away? Because I'm probably going to call you that more often.
Yeah, we might as well. I think you're going to have to be the one to explain because you kind of came up with all of this. So,
yeah, was there even much evolution to it, or did I just? We called you. We always called you Bear.
I think it started. I think one time. I think you tried to call me like Brundon, but you almost did it. You did it in almost like a British accent. And then you just kept doing it, and then all of a sudden you're like Burundi, and then it just kind of stuck ever since. Because then it's what I've been kind of referred to a lot as after that. So
yeah, it's more often Burundi or Burundi Bear than it is Brandon.
Yeah, exactly. No, and even like anywhere, it's either I get called Burundi or Corbs.
Yeah,
like at other places. So it's literally like I never hear my first name from anybody.
Yeah.
So when people do say it, I'm like, ooh, that's a little.
Yeah, it's always weird because
it's a wake-up call almost.
Whenever our grandparents visit or whenever I'm talking to mom or dad, I try and call you Brandon, but it feels a little bit abrasive.
Yeah.
After calling you Burundi for so long.
Yeah, even when I hear my first name, I'm just like, well, that's like we're getting serious here. I feel like I'm in trouble when I just hear my first name.
Yeah, it's like when most people hear their middle name.
Yeah, literally, exactly. But yeah, welcome to the Stick 'em Up podcast. This is episode number 1. I think we'll just do a little bit of housekeeping to start it off. It's time to kind of talk about ourselves here a little bit before we dive into the big topics here.
All right, I'll start with a little bit of hockey backstory for me. I am a Tampa Bay Lightning fan. Go Bolts! We live in Calgary, and back in 2004, at the time I was a kid, and I was real small. So when Marty St. Louis won the Hart Trophy, I was just like, man, this guy is boss as fuck. So I just started cheering for Tampa. And a couple months later, I was very confused why everyone around me disliked Tampa so much, because I didn't understand the finals at that point, because I was like 6.
Yeah, and this series especially, like if you're a Tampa Bay fan, there's a lot of there's a lot of hatred towards him and his teams.
Like they definitely harbor some ill will.
I wouldn't even necessarily say it's like a rivalry between like Tampa Bay and Calgary as teams, but like I feel like not even necessarily Tampa Bay fans like towards Calgary fans. It's Calgary fans towards Tampa Bay fans. Yeah, they just seem to really and it's like something that's out of their control, right? But yeah, it is what it is.
There just wasn't enough cameras to know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably
different times back then. Like
I don't know many of the fans, but I gotta imagine it's fairly similar to who is it? Was it Dallas and Buffalo?
Yeah.
When who was it? Did Modano kick it in? Or no, he scored in the crease.
In the crease, yeah. And that one doesn't get talked. And that one's like a really like it's one where it's easier to call that one than in the Tampa Bay Calgary series. And I feel like the Tampa Bay Calgary one gets talked about way more.
Yeah.
Like
which is wild because one's a missed goal, which is obviously huge, but the other one was the Stanley Cup winning goal.
Yeah.
Like that's
that sealed it right there. And again, also with Calgary fans, like not to shit on them, but also to shit on them. It's like okay, sure, it was in. But like there was still the whole rest of that game there that Calgary could have won. And then because I was in game 6, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then there's still all of game 7 that they could have won. So it's like again, it's like okay, maybe it was in, but like there's no guarantee they even win the cup.
Yeah.
If it was ruled a goal. So
they still sent it to game 7 at the start of the second overtime. So they still had all of the OT and whatnot. I try not to badmouth it too much because I don't want to come across as just like cheering, picking Tampa's side because I'm a fan. But
yeah. Oh, and I can say shit on Calgary because I'm a very depressed San Jose Sharks fan. Kind of almost similar to your story of cheering for Tampa Bay. I was I don't even know what age. I was quite young, and I was reading a book, and it was about Jonathan Chichu at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is like a cool story for this guy. And I was like, this is kind of a sick team. Like, I love the logo. So then I just kind of started
Great colors.
watching them more and kind of cheering for them. And then all of a sudden, they bring in Joe Thornton, who I instantly fell in love with as a player, and then, kind of became obsessed with him. And then I never looked back after that. But it's funny though, because growing up as a kid, you're kind of always like, before you find like your team, you're always kind of like, oh, this team's cool, this team's cool.
Yeah.
And growing up, I went through a phase where it was like, I thought, man, Ottawa was cool, and that would have sucked.
I was gonna say, I remember that.
And then I also went through a phase where I'm like, man, Buffalo's cool, that would have sucked. So it's
man.
So it's like I picked San Jose, and they've had the most
They've had very continued playoff success.
Yeah, and like none of those three teams have won a cup or anything, but San Jose's definitely had the most success.
You'd rather be a Sharks fan than a Sabres fan.
Oh, 100%.
That's pretty safe to say.
Oh, yeah. So
the Senators have had some good success. They were, especially when you started getting into hockey back then. Yeah,
and then even a time when I was like, man, fuck. I was like, Erik Karlsson's sick on Ottawa. Like, I was like, man, imagine if I was a Sens fan, how cool that would be. And then all of a sudden he goes to San Jose, and then I was like, that was one of the coolest days ever being a Sharks fan for me.
That was really cool.
Didn't pay off for the first little bit, but definitely this season, he turned the clock back and just went off. So
yeah, I remember the off season where there was so much talk about Stamkos being moved and not re-signing with Tampa, and there was some crazy numbers floating around. Teams like back then, their contracts weren't, they were big at that point, because I think it was 2016. But so we're only 2 seasons away from McDavid being offered his 12 and a half. But I think people were talking to like $12 million back then for Stamkos to go to Toronto.
Yeah.
And it was like, frick, that's a lot of money to be offered to go to your home team, your childhood team.
Yeah.
Took a huge discount to stay with us. So
yeah. Well, and it worked out incredibly for Stamkos, because that whole thing was always like, oh, Stamkos is coming home, he's going to Toronto, this and this, and then all of a sudden, boom, like it out of nowhere. Like, it wasn't even like, there was no reports that he was even like Stamkos was in talks with Tampa about an extension. It just kind of happened like boom.
Yeah.
That was also right during that crazy hour where I'm blanking on, because I know the one during that hour it was Taylor Hall got traded for Adam Larson.
Oh,
and then PK Subban and Shea Weber were traded for each other.
The swap.
But I always think back about that, because it's like, so Stamkos re-signed to stay with Tampa, and now all of a sudden it shifted to Tavares now. Oh, now Tavares, his contract's up. He's going to go.
Very similar situation.
Yeah. And I look back at it and I think, you know what? If Tavares did what Stamkos did and decided to stay, I mean, it's tough to say, but I want to say it's probably Tavares that has those two rings over Stamkos. Because then you look back to when the Islanders and Tampa Bay played each other in the Eastern Final back-to-back years. You almost got to think, man, Tavares there could have been the difference maker.
I definitely think,
or even maybe one and one. But
in the bubble, they were something about that run. Like, I hadn't even watched them have success in the playoffs. Like super recently, like the year before that, they got the Columbus sweep. But it didn't feel like it had that magic up until that point.
Yeah.
As soon as Point scored that 5 OT game winner in game 1 of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Everything after that, I was like, we play each team game 1 and it'd be like, oh, we can beat this team.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe 1-1. Maybe they each get one, because I think the second year.
So we went to game 7 that year. And we won game 7 1-0
off a shorthanded goal.
The only shorthanded goal the Islanders let in that entire
season, yeah. And you got to think, like, throughout that entire series, it's like maybe Tavares pops off in one of the earlier games and the Islanders win, or he makes a difference in that game 7. Like, and you almost got to think, like, man, if he had that loyalty that Stamkos had, he's probably got at least 1 cup, I would say. But hey, look at him. He got to go to his childhood team and
at least gone to a conference final.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah, exactly, right. He would have got out of the first round more than once off a lucky goal. But enough shit talk in Toronto. I'm sure
Yeah,
there'll be plenty more in the future of that.
Yeah, and you know what? He's making 11.5 million a year. I'm sure he's not too upset.
Yeah, no, I think he's and he's only got 2 years left, and then it's I don't think he's ever gonna leave Toronto now. I think now that he's there and he's the captain, like he's gonna stay. But they'll have to figure out what to do there because they're kind of
very interesting to see what his cap hit's gonna be like on his next contract.
Yeah, because like he's not even gonna be he's gonna be on the older side, but he's not gonna be like in that Giordano type situation where he signs 2 years at league minimum because he just wants a cup so bad. Like he's already made his money. Like Tavares could probably still sign a like 8.5 million at like
a team would sign him for 8
for 5 years or something. Like he can still get a decent contract if he wants, but if he wants to stay in Toronto and win a cup there, he might have to take a big discount to put a good group around him.
It does seem like the guys want to win there, but like, man, nobody wants to win bad enough to take the team discount.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I don't blame the players for. Like,
no, you can never blame the players for wanting to get.
If you're lucky, you get 20 healthy years as an NHL player, and then you got to ride that money for the rest of your life. Like a lot of them get other jobs in the league and stuff, but you want the majority of your money to be from that.
Yeah,
well, I don't blame you.
It's also even in an era now where like there's very few guys who that like before you used to be like there you'd have multiple older players on the team, whereas now the game's just getting so much younger and faster where it's like those older players like Eric Stahl was a beast for how many years, and then he went a whole year without playing because no team wanted him. It's like this is a great.
I was so shocked that offseason. I was like somebody's gonna pick him up. At a certain point I was like, bro, like you tell me he can't make the roster on Arizona or something? Like,
yeah, exactly, right?
I guess, Arizona's probably not exactly looking to win.
Yeah, and maybe there is still the argument, like, maybe he didn't necessarily sign because then he wouldn't be eligible to play in the Olympics.
That's true.
Whereas then now he was able to, and I think he did sign after the Olympics. I think he signed for the remainder of the season, but so... but anyways, should we hop into the big topic here, the one that's kind of on everybody's mind right now?
We'll get to the Stanley Cup playoff preview in a minute. I do have one thing I want to bring up first.
Okay.
Last night, as fans do, it was very late at night, and I decided to watch a video simply titled "Every Tampa Bay Playoff Goal Since 2020."
Okay.
It's like an hour long. It's great.
Yeah.
But I noticed something on a rewatch that I had kind of forgot. And I just want to ask you something. When you think of, there's a very specific archetype of player that is a good player. But when the playoffs hit, when moments get clutch, they become not just bad, but detrimental to your team. Can you think of any examples of players like this? Just off the top of your head.
Wait, so players who
do something stupid and end up costing their team.
Well, I mean, like if you want to, like if you're thinking about like a player who's like of a high over an average skill.
Yeah, not like a bottom six player.
The first guy that comes to mind for me would be Kadri.
Exactly. That's exactly the answer I was expecting.
I mean, in recent years, he's gotten better. I'll give him that.
He's gotten a bit better.
He's got his ring finally. But yeah, those years with Toronto, like and even now I don't think he's gonna get re-signed. I think he's kind of worn out his welcome. But even a guy like Michael Bunting, like he.
Yeah, I don't think
he really kind of
afford to keep him. Matthew Nyes kept him out of the lineup, and Nyes is only going to get better.
Yeah, exactly.
But those are two names that I very much expected. I'm really glad you didn't say the name that I was thinking of because I found this not incredibly shocking knowing him, but I did not remember. I was watching, and
I've got a name in my head, so I'm curious to see if it's going to be that name.
In Game 4 of the 2020 Stanley Cup Finals in the bubble, Kevin Shattenkirk scores to put Tampa up 3-1 in the finals in OT on the power play, a penalty taken by Captain Jamie Benn. Same guy who just in the past week he played. What did he play? Like 42 seconds of time on ice before cross-checking down at Mark Stone and and getting himself taken out of the rest of the series.
Yeah, pretty much the rest of the series. Yeah, like he only came back. He was only able to come back in that game 6, and they just got shit kicked in that one.
Yeah. Not only is he a pretty good player, but that's your captain getting taken out for that time. Like, that's two times.
And not only that, but in a year where Jamie Benn kind of really revitalized his career.
Yeah.
Because he looked awful the last couple, and then this year he really put all the pieces back together.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was the one that took a penalty there in that game.
Yeah. I was just watching, it was just going through all the goals, and then it shows the goal, and then, the next 6-7 seconds of the broadcast, and it shows all the guys selling, and it just shows Ben just sitting there in the box looking all pissed off, and I was like, that's right. He was
And that one's such a tough. It's a tough situation when viewing it because
I'm pretty sure it was like a minor penalty. I don't think he I don't think he was like serving a 5-minute or anything in OT, but
And so his one this year, I have a very hard time grasping the concept because you compare it to, and again, it's like you can compare it to. So he got 2-game suspension,
right?
But it's basically 3 because he was tossed out at the very beginning of game 3, so he missed that entire game. So call it basically a 3-game suspension. That's what Michael Bunting got for his hit on Chernak. He got 3 games, right?
Yes, I believe he got 3.
And I think what Bunting did was way worse. And then also on the flip side, you can even say, okay, look at what Pietrangelo did to Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah.
Like, goes deliberately out of his way to 2-hand chop him.
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like what Pietrangelo did was way worse compared to Ben. So it's like, why did Ben get those games? But regardless of that,
I think
Dallas did win those 2 games that Ben was suspended for the entirety of.
Toronto also won the games after Michael Bunting was gone. They lost that game that he put them down for so much, but they won the next 3 games.
They won the next 3, yeah. And then it bugs me because people say I see a lot of people, and maybe they're just caught up in the moment of it, but they're talking oh, you got to just strip Jamie Benn of the C right now. I don't think he should play even when he's done being spent. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, be mad, but you could especially now when he came back, game 6 back at home, you can't justify not playing him. That's your captain. He's a leader on the team. He's got the C for a reason.
Than it being Michael Bunting.
Exactly. And especially where
more of a loose cannon and much less of a player.
Well, and especially more where when Michael Bunting came out, they had Matthew Nice who came in, who played well. He looked like he belonged. Whereas I think it was Fredrik Olofsson came in for Jamie Benn, and he played on the fourth line,
not keeping Ben out.
Yeah, and he Olofsson, I'm not shitting on him as a player. He's a good player, but he's no Jamie Benn. He doesn't bring to the team what Jamie Benn can bring. And even with Ben, if you're pissed at him, just put him on the fourth line.
Yeah.
Don't adjust all your lines that have been working. Just take Olofsson out, put Ben on the fourth line, be like, hey, you can still do power play and whatnot, but
this is about sending a message in the locker room or something. But
yeah, and it's about keeping the flow of the team.
Yeah, you cannot. I get the idea behind stripping of the C. I don't know if those people mean right away or in the off season.
I think a lot of people meant you do it right then and there.
Because I can see an argument at least for in the off season. You can't strip your captain of the C mid-series. That creates way too many distractions. Yeah. That is way too much to think about in the freaking playoffs.
Yeah, and then sitting him it makes no sense. Yeah. Because for all maybe he sits out and they win the game. People are oh yeah, they made the right call. He could have also went out there and been a big factor in a Dallas win and sending it to Game 7. It could have gone either way. It's just. And especially as a coach, someone like Peter DeBoer, who's a smart guy, you just can't justify sitting your captain and one of your better forwards for something stupid. It was stupid, but there's just no need to sit a guy like that, especially in a game that's that important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just watching that video last night, and I thought that was Thought that was an interesting parallel considering that like just happened in the past week or so.
And I almost think like if he got, and again, it's like maybe if he got suspended in game like 1 or 2, and then Dallas just loses out and gets swept, then maybe, you know, he would come into the conversation, or like the conversation with like a Kadri or something, especially also with the penalty he took in 2020 that you brought up earlier. And so, yeah, it's like, I don't think he's necessarily in that conversation yet, but like maybe it's something, especially
I don't
if they make the playoffs
I don't think
next
that's
year.
necessarily his reputation. But,
yeah, no, but again, it's like if they make the playoffs next
parallel.
year and something like that happens again, you know, it's he might start to get in that conversation.
While we're talking about Kadri, I just want to bring up like, what was he saying at the end at the press conference after they won the cup? He's like, you know, to all those people who doubted me and all that stuff. Like,
yeah, it was.
I get he wants to feel vindicated and stuff, but
yeah,
those Toronto fans were insanely justified, right? Like, no Toronto fans were saying Kadri's a bad player or they don't like him.
Yeah, no.
They were going, dude, stop getting suspended in the playoffs, which is insanely fair.
Yeah, I think I can't remember what he said. It was something about all those people who like thought I hurt the team or something, or thought I hurt the team in the playoffs or something. It was something like that. And then he just said, you can kiss my
You hurt the team by not playing because you're good.
Yeah.
Like, we are literally asking you to play for the team in the playoffs.
Yeah. And and all the stuff he got suspended for was unnecessary, stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Like it had no impact on the game at all. So, but yeah, that'd be interesting to see and especially now, you know, Dallas.
It's not like they need Ben a ton either. They got a lot of good young talent coming up.
They do, yeah. And again, yeah, it's also like, and I haven't seen the full thing. Even a guy like Tyler Seguin looked fucking terrible. Like, he looked really bad. And I think he was dealing with an injury because he just looked awful.
Yeah.
So I think he must have been dealing with something
like mechanically awful, like he looks like he's playing injured, or is it like, does he look like his head's not in it? Like, is he making bad plays?
I think both. Like, I think he had an injury that was like had so much pain on him, was affecting him, that he couldn't even fully focus on the game and what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
Which is also a big blow to Dallas's team as well there, because he's a big part of their offense.
Yeah, there's some guys who, like, last year, Draisaitl in the playoffs, is playing basically on one leg, but like everything else is still there, so he can just sit there and make these passes and shots, and he almost went like 2 points per game in those playoffs.
Yeah.
And then there's some guys where they just get an injury that just completely knocks them off their game, even if it's like a wrist thing and it only affects their shot, it like affects them mentally enough that they're not making the proper plays. Like, some guys just handle it differently.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's things like that. That's why Nathan McKinnon was saying after they won the cup, he was saying one of the hugest factors in the locker room was the hockey or the sports psychologist. He was a huge proponent.
Yeah, that's right.
That was really cool to hear them being like, yeah, you know, they always talk about the athletic trainers and the coordinators and the coaches, but like,
yeah,
that's I mean, probably especially for goalies. Like,
yeah,
you gotta be in the zone.
You gotta be mentally focused, and you gotta be dialed in for sure.
Yeah.
All right, I think it's time.
Time to talk finals.
Stanley Cup Finals. I don't think anybody in the world had this on their bracket. I don't think anybody did in the end.
I definitely don't doubt if this finals is a zero total people.
I think because pretty much everybody had, coming out of the East, I think it was pretty much either Boston, Tampa, Toronto, or...
A lot of people had the Rangers.
Or the Rangers, yeah. I don't think not even many people had Carolina, which was surprising. And then
people wrote them off, which is like, I've kind of written them off the past couple of years when everyone's high on them. I was a little higher on them this year, and everyone else seemed to cool down. I was wondering if I didn't know something. But
I was high on them.
The East is a bloodbath.
Yeah, I think the part that hurt Carolina, though, is the fact that, you know, and people say, like, well, like, you don't need to replace a guy that you basically never had. But it's like, you did have Max Pacioretty, who was great for the, 3.5 games or something he played. He goes down injured, but all of a sudden that opens up like I think $5.5 million in cap space for him that they didn't use. Like their only move at the deadline, being one of the best teams in the league, was you grab Shane Gostisbehere, a defenseman who arguably you didn't need, rather than a forward who you
teams in the league
needed.
on defense. Like at the very least, they got to be like top 5, top 3, right? Like I'm surprised they didn't get a forward instead.
And sure, Gostisbehere for a third, that's a fine trade because he was only a third pairing guy. And then you can't predict Svechnikov getting injured the way that he did.
Yeah, that's
like, you could have went out
an injured squad.
They just and they're in a situation almost like what Edmonton has been in for the past couple years, where you've got this great core and you're in win now mode, but you refuse to give up any prospects or draft picks to make the team better.
Yeah.
Like this is the first time in the McDavid Draisaitl era in Edmonton that they used a first round pick at the deadline to bring in a good player. And they brought in a great player in Ekholm. And it's like, you know what, I feel like almost if Carolina, and I know Carolina they were also very in hard on Timo Meier as well.
Yeah.
And I just don't think they wanted to give up what the price that, and San Jose they didn't even get they got a solid return, but not a great one. Like Carolina could have easily matched that offer and thrown in a little bit of a sweetener and gotten him. And then all of a sudden, boom, that makes your team that much better in the playoffs there. And because their goal scoring was not there in the Eastern Final. And I think you bring in any top 6 forward, it could have been the total difference maker in that series. Because every game was a 1-goal game.
Yeah, and very close for a sweep.
And even game 1, again, it kind of almost goes back to the Braden Point goal you're talking about in the 5th overtime. Tkachuk scores that goal right at the end of 4th overtime. If Carolina scores and gets up 1-0 that series, Carolina could maybe have gone on to sweep in that series. It was such a close series, and I feel like
Tkachuk's a dangerous guy when he's on a roll and when he's feeling himself, he's hyping up the crowd. He loves, you know how much a guy like that relishes in the fact that he kept so many fans in the arena for an extra entire game just so he could send them home pissed.
Yeah.
Dude, he probably slept so good that night knowing that.
Yeah, no, he balled out that. Well, because he had the OT winner
for him
1 and 2.
Than if he did that at a home game.
Yeah. No, he's a man on a mission right now, and that's what makes Florida a very scary team going into this Cup final here.
Do you think he wins the Conn Smythe if they win the Cup?
No.
You think Bobrovsky?
I think Bobrovsky's got to. Bobrovsky has, and especially the story also and I think that's a big part, especially of what goes into when they vote for the Conn Smythe. I think they look at the players as a whole in the playoffs, but they also kind of look at stories a bit of it. Mm-hmm. Especially, I think that's why Crosby won both Conn Smythes when Pittsburgh won. Yeah, their back-to-back cups. And I think especially Bobrovsky, he wasn't even the starter come the beginning of the playoffs, and then he finally comes in, and I think he came in, I think halfway through Game 4 against Boston. And so then he's in there as they go on to win 3 in a row and win that series.
The record-setting Bruins, for sure.
And then they go on to, slap around the Maple Leafs and then slap around Carolina as well, But I could see Tkachuk still because he has had some very big goals in the playoffs.
That's the thing. I do think Bobrovsky, as they are projected after the first 3 rounds, probably should win it. I think they would like to give it to Tkachuk more. He's so out there. They had him on TNT in the pregame of the one NBA game or whatever it was.
Yeah.
He's scoring these, not just is he putting up points, but he's scoring overtime goals, things that grab a lot of headlines. I think they probably give it to him, even if Bobrovsky definitely deserves it.
Yeah, and I could see that, especially because again, like I mentioned earlier, Tkachuk has so many just huge goals throughout the playoffs. I know he had that big game-winning goal in Game 5 against the Bruins. Yeah, he had the game-winning goal in that one, didn't he?
I think so.
I'm gonna double check
I think he had the
before I look like
assist
a
on the
meatball
Game
here.
7 game winner. That was Verhaeghe who scored that one.
Yeah, Verhaeghe got the one in Game 7, but even against Carolina, like he got the OT winner in Game 1, OT winner in Game 2, and then basically called a third OT winner in that Game 4 against Carolina because he scored with like what 2 seconds left or something.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So he did have the OT winner in Game 5 against the Bruins.
Yeah.
Because then that's when he was saying to the guys afterwards. He said like, "Hey, you know, it was something like we'll be back here. Like let's get used to this room or something, and then we'll be back." And you know, he's balled out every step of the way for them. So it's. Yeah, I could very well see Matthew Tkachuk winning, and especially an American player in an American market, like that's also a pretty high draw there as well.
All right, so who do you see being the Conn Smythe winner in Vegas if they win? I know this one seems a bit more difficult than Florida. Florida's got some outstanding players right now, but Vegas kind of been doing it a lot by committee.
Yeah, Vegas is a lot more spread out kind of in terms compared to what we're seeing with Florida. And you know, there's so many. Like I almost feel like with Florida, unless somebody goes.
Yeah, like Verhaeghe would have to have like a 4-goal game in 3 of the games in the final.
Yeah, like someone's got to go on an absolute tear. Whereas with Vegas, I really do think if they win the cup, the Conn Smythe is really going to be determined on the finals. Like someone's really going to have to step up. Like, because I could name like I think kind of the 3 guys I'm mostly kind of thinking is probably going to be Eichel, Marchessault, or I want to say maybe William Karlsson, but again, I think he's really going to have to elevate it in the finals, but even also a guy like Adin Hill. I think, you know, Adin Hill came out of nowhere.
That's such an unsexy name for Conn Smythe, but it's insanely realistic.
Like it is, yeah. And it's always like, you know, I know a lot of people say like, oh, when they pick a goal, like it's an easy cop out to just, you know, pick the goalie, like they're the backbone of the team. Yeah. But it's like, you know, Adin Hill, and again, it's almost kind of similar to the story of Bobrovsky, but even larger than that. Because, you know, he kind of came in and was the 4th-string goalie on the team.
Yeah.
You could almost even say 5th string at the time once Jonathan Quick came in. But, you know, and he really kind of just was forced in during that Winnipeg series, and he's looked phenomenal ever since. And as a San Jose fan, like, I want to see him succeed because I do like him.
Yeah.
But it's tough to see him succeed on the team that, you know, you just really, really dislike.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I almost want to say he's kind of my front runner on Vegas. Yeah. But that could all very well change in the Cup Finals.
Which is wild because even after what he's done in the playoffs, if they are a completely 100% healthy team, I think he's in the AHL.
Yeah.
You're not sending down Robin Lehner, and Logan Thompson was so good.
Well, Robin Lehner didn't play at all this year.
Yeah.
But
I'm saying if they were completely healthy, that would be the 1-2, Thompson and Lehner, I would imagine.
Yeah. And then they've even got Brossoit, who was their starter at the beginning of the playoffs. Yeah. And even a lot of people were surprised when Brossoit didn't like when he was out, that Jonathan Quick wasn't the guy to come in and play.
Yeah, doesn't Quick have a Conn Smythe trophy?
Yep.
You think a deadline acquisition like that would play in the playoffs when your goalies are going down?
Yeah, and they went with Hill, and he stole it. And now it means, you know, when you're looking at next year for Vegas, what is what do they do? Because now they've got a bunch of goalies.
That's a lot of goalies.
They're gonna have to figure it out. They're just collecting goalies like Infinity Stones at this point.
Do you know how much Jonathan Quick is getting paid?
He's making like $5 million still.
Okay,
so he's at the tail end of that kind of.
He hasn't reached his like final contract where he's like taking like $2 million or less to just play.
He'll probably, honestly, if he wants to keep playing, like he'll have to do 1 million for 1 year or something.
Yeah.
Like,
Hey, Brian Elliott's probably not coming back to Tampa.
yeah.
He could be a new
Yeah,
backup.
I think he even knows kind of at this point now, like, he's not going to go anywhere and be a starter.
No.
Like, he showed it this year with LA, and I think that's why LA ended up moving him, was because they were just like, you know, you're not the guy, and
unusable.
we had to move out a goalie, and Phoenix Copley was playing so good for them, and then nobody wanted to take Cal Peterson. Like, he was on waivers and no one wanted him.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, goalies more than anyone can bounce back, and Peterson's a young guy. He can, you know, you got him signed in for long term. You want to try and wait it out and hope that he breaks
Yeah, exactly, right? So, and it would be interesting because, like, I know there's I'm trying to, so I believe if Vegas wins the cup, I think only Thompson and Hill will have their names on the cup. Maybe Quick. Because
Are you certain? Because only 2 goalies are really eligible for the player section. But then I guess because the team gets like a certain amount of players, certain amount of goalies, coaches, and then I think they get like a couple extra spots. Like I think they get like 5 or 6. Like
because
you can add like other people. Because like in the past, you know, there's been like his name escapes me. I think it was the GM or the owner. I think it was the owner of the Oilers. One of the Gretzky years put his dad's name on the cup, and it's one of the few names that's X'd out on the cup because the league was like, you can put like somebody within the organization who you think deserves it, but you can't just throw your dad on there.
Well, that was even like when the St. Louis Blues won the cup that year. The whole big story was that young girl Layla, who was a big inspiration of the team, and people were saying, well, you got to put her name on. Like, I think she got a ring.
That's cool.
But people are like, you got to put her name on the cup. And it's like, again, like, it's a cool story and whatnot, but like, you don't just put a random, like, well, no, I don't want to say a random fan, but like, you don't put a fan's name on the cup.
You can't do that the one time, because then every time something like that happens, people expect it. And it kind of becomes this weird, like, thing that like the Masterton trophies come into, where it's like originally you wanted to, like, you know, reward and bring awareness to the hardship some players did, but now it's become this weird thing where it's like we're trying to compare traumas. Like, this guy rehabbed an injury and also had a concussion, and then he came back and willed his team to the playoffs, and it's like, well, this guy's mom died or he has cancer, and it's like you're trying to compare all these traumas, and it just feels wrong.
Yeah, and I would like, and that's also the thing. It's because every team gets to submit 1 player for the Bill Masterton.
Yeah.
And then they have to pick 3. And then out of those 3, only 1. And it's like, and you know, maybe the players, I don't know necessarily. Like, if you're a player and like you're a finalist and you don't win, like, I don't know how you feel about it exactly. Yeah. But like, again, yeah, it's stupid because it's basically comparing trauma of players.
Yeah, it seems to breed some like toxic conversation. It really feels like a Twitter conversation from start to end. Yeah. Like, trying to compare something injury based that like happened within hockey versus something completely unrelated where like, you know, family issues, or if a player enters like the player assistance program, like it's completely different stuff. It's honestly, they should, if they really want to do it, they should, like, I don't know if they put names on the Masterton, probably not. Maybe it's on like a plaque on it, but they should just they should just award it to 1 player per team and just have the team pick them, and then like just all of them can win it. Yeah. Like,
and so going back to the original topic, so I don't know for sure, but what I believe is, so if Vegas does win the cup, Logan Thompson will be on there for sure because he played enough games in the regular season.
Right.
Aiden Hill will be on there for sure because he'll have played in the Stanley Cup final. Brossoit, even if he comes back, I think he's just done. So his name won't be on the cup.
Because you have to either play half or more than half of the regular season or playoff games, or play in 1 game in the finals, right?
Yeah. And so it's like Jonathan Quick, you know, So he's the one I'm unsure of because it's like he didn't play, like he was a deadline acquisition, so he didn't play enough games in the regular season, I think, regardless with Vegas. And then he hasn't played at all in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He probably, I'm assuming he won't play in the finals.
You assume they're
assuming that he'll
or
doesn't get
down.
pulled or anything. And so it's like, but he's the backup. Like he's still traveling with the team. He's on the bench. Like he's a part of it. So I almost feel like he has to, because even when you think when Tampa Bay won the cup, like Brian Elliott, I don't think he but I guess he was the back. Yeah, he was the backup.
Well, so Elliott's not on him, but McElhaney's on too.
Oh yeah, I guess Elliott wasn't.
Yeah, he was there for Colorado.
Yeah, so McElhaney, yeah, he's on there. So I think you probably get Thompson, Hill, and Quick would be on there.
God, how bad does that have to be a guy like Robin Leonard?
Yeah,
you were the starter, and then you just no fault of your own. You just went down to injury, and
no, he's bankrupt
and fuck, and then not getting to be on the cup when your team wins it. Like I would not be if they win. I hope they use one of their free spots to put him on.
I don't think he gets a ring even. Because like he's been away from the team, like
he'll probably
he hasn't contributed anything this season.
Actually, Vegas is a bit of a
it's like how, and again, it's like even if he does, like, does that ring even hold any value to him? It's like, hey, I got a free Stanley Cup ring for sitting at home all year, like, you know, that would be an interesting one to see. But I hope we don't have to go down that road.
Because like I don't know how other teams did it, but like in Tampa, I know like some of the guys who are like longtime workers at the merch store in Amalie, got rings. I know Sonia, the girl who does all the singing of the national anthem. She has one ring, maybe even two. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know how Vegas would do it, and I don't
imagine
want to find
starter
out.
at the beginning of the year would have it, but
yeah, I don't even want to find out because I don't want them to win. So. Yeah.
I don't want to find out because of how sketchy Vegas it seems to be as an org, like randomly just doing players dirty. Like
no risk. And that was even to the point where last year during free agency, multiple players told their agents, I don't even want you to engage in anything with Vegas. Like I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Because there's no loyalty, no respect. Like it's but with that out of the way, who are you picking? Because this is kind of one, like it's almost like, because you're a Tampa Bay fan, so it's basically your biggest rival.
Yeah.
And I'm a San Jose fan against their biggest rival, and now they're going head to head. Like it's...
Yeah. Florida's definitely up there. I would definitely say that Boston's still our biggest rival currently.
Okay.
But Florida's definitely up there. It's nice that they're good now, so we have a reason to dislike them.
Yeah.
Because it was really just us punching down at their shitty team for 10 years.
Exactly, right.
They've actually stepped up, and now it's a proper rivalry.
Although you've got a reason to cheer for Florida though. Still,
that's the thing. I don't want to cheer for Florida, but I don't exactly like Vegas either. And between Gudis and Verhaeghe, I've got to cheer for Panthers, I guess.
Yeah. Like I don't want, and it was so tough as well because going into the conference finals, I was like, man, like, because I want to see, Brent Burns or Joe Pavelski win a cup. And it was like
so good.
And I was cheering for both of them. And I was like, man, if they were in the finals, like that'd be tough because one would finally win a cup, but then the other one loses again in the Stanley Cup final. Like Brent Burns has lost once, Pavelski twice. And I was like, even if just one of them can get through, and then they both got, and I'm like, I really don't want to. I don't want to see either Florida or Vegas win a cup, but I got to cheer for Florida because, as a San Jose fan, you'd never hear the end of it if Vegas won the cup. Who do you think is going to win? Like I know you're kind of back in Florida more, but who do you think will win between the two?
I am fairly confident that Florida is going to win. I would say Vegas is a good team. I'll say Florida in 6.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was thinking. Because when I was thinking about it first, I was thinking, I think Florida takes game 1. And then Vegas bounces back because Vegas is the home team. They strike back and take game 2. I think going to Florida, I think Florida takes 3 and 4 at home. and I think Vegas takes Game 5 at home, and I think going back to Florida, then I think Florida wins it at home in front of their however many fans.
Are they the home team? Because they got in on a wild card spot.
Who?
Florida.
Yeah, no. So Vegas has home ice advantage. So then Florida wins game 6 at home.
Yeah. Yeah, I got mixed up there.
I
definitely think that's something like that is going to happen.
And it's no shot at obviously I dislike Vegas, but like they are a good team. I think when you compare the two teams on paper, I think Vegas is the better team. But the momentum and the mojo like that Florida has going, like what are they? Since going down 3-1 to Boston, they're 11-1.
Yeah.
And that one loss against Toronto wasn't even necessarily a loss. Like that Florida should have won that game. So like Florida could have easily been 11-0 since going down 3-1 to the best regular season team of all time, if you want to call Boston that this year.
Yeah, like they're on an incredible run, and I don't know if it's an argument for or against them that so many of them are close games, 1-goal games. Like, does that mean they aren't leagues better than their opposition, or does that mean they know when to shut it down? They're clutch when they need to be?
Yeah, I think they're just a gutsy team. They just find ways to get it done. They're winning the
games playoff style.
Yeah. They're just finding ways to get it done. And it's honestly really incredible. Like, especially when there was a conversation earlier this season because Florida went all in last year, and they traded their first round pick, which is this year in 2023, to Montreal in that Ben Sherratt deal. Yeah. And it wasn't even a protected first at all. Like, it was just straight up a first round pick. It's now Montreal.
There was a bit there where Florida was faltering.
They were down in the bottom 10 of the league.
It looked like that could have been Bedard.
Yeah, it was in the lottery.
Trading Stützle is bad. Wait until Bedard goes to another team.
Yeah, and especially Montreal of all teams, and so that was a big topic. And now all of a sudden, Florida, and not even by Florida's own power, they had to rely on Pittsburgh to lose against a Chicago team filled with a bunch of bums. Like, it was not a good Chicago team.
I was so excited.
And Pittsburgh got shit kicked there. And then all of a sudden Florida just barely squeaks in. And now they're in the Cup final and they're on a roll.
Yeah. I was so excited when I looked at the end of the schedule and I was like, Pittsburgh's going to make it. All they have to do is beat Columbus and Chicago. And they couldn't get it done.
Yeah. And then Florida knocks off again, if you want to call them the best regular season team ever,
by
Boston.
Is it point percentage?
Just overall,
at least.
I think it was points and wins, wasn't it?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know about points, but I do think they had 65 wins.
It was definitely wins. I know for sure.
Yeah. And
so then you're down 3-1, all of a sudden, and down 3-1, Game 5 in Boston. And one of the most electric crowds and hardest arenas to play in, as players have said, you win that, and then you go on to win that series, and then you go off and just dominate the fourth best team in the regular season, the Maple Leafs, and then you sweep the second best team in the league, the Carolina Hurricanes, who I think it was from around like January to the end of the regular season, Carolina had a better record than Boston. It was just Boston started off so strong that's what really helped them.
Which is wild. They started the season without Marchand and McAvoy, right?
Yep.
Like, that's wild. At the start of the season, I put like $5 or $10 on Boston to miss the playoffs. And I just had that staring me in the face every time I opened my sports betting app the whole year.
Well, I had Vegas picked to miss the playoffs, and they're in the Cup final now. So
yeah, don't we look smart, huh?
But yeah, I think Florida's just on such a incredible run. Like, I can't.
Old Uncle Mo.
And
momentum.
Also, another big thing I want to talk about, because this Stanley Cup final will finally end. What I've always thought is, like, I can see the reason behind people like thinking it's a big deal, but I also think it's kind of stupid. This Stanley Cup final will officially end the whole thing about how no player who's making double digits in their salary, so 10 million plus.
Yeah.
No team has has ever won a cup with a guy with a double-digit salary.
Yeah.
But now this year, either Vegas with Jack Eichel or Florida with Barkov and Bobrovsky.
Yeah.
So that whole narrative will finally come to an end, which I always thought was kind of a stupid one. But I was like, I get it. Like,
get what they're painting it as. Like, you know,
yeah.
I think a lot of it does stem from people loving to shit on Toronto because they've got, 3 guys making north of 10 mil. But yeah, people love to be like, you know, if you don't have all team friendly contracts, like you got that one guy taking up that much, it's impossible to win. Like you can't.
Yeah, they say you can't build a team around him. It's like
if Pittsburgh gave Crosby 10 mil, you think they don't win in 16-17? I don't know how much that breaks that roster.
I was still down the hill. San Jose would have won the cup in 2016 if Thomas Hertl didn't get injured in Game 1.
Yeah,
because that was really
Game 1 of the finals.
Yeah, because that was really when he turned into the player he is today. Like he started off so great when he first came in, but then that knee injury from Dustin Brown really set him back. And then that year, like especially in that playoffs, is when he really came alive, especially playing with Thornton and Pavelski. Like just it elevated his game so much. And then he went down injured, and it was like shit.
Yeah.
But hey, who knows? We'll never know. I'll have to live with that forever.
It is a little bit comforting sometimes thinking, you know, we totally would have won, right?
Oh, I will always think that. It helps me sleep at night better.
Yeah. I definitely think we would have had probably the 3rd cup in a row if Point was in the playoffs. He is such a goal. I get why the NHL games have him as a playmaker, but man, since that bubble playoffs and forward, he has been a goal-scoring machine.
Yeah.
Like he freaking buries the biscuit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm going with I like the pick of Florida in 6. I think they even maybe Florida in 5, like man,
I think those
they're having a tough time losing. Like
Vegas is a decent opponent, but I mean, look what they did to Toronto Hurricanes. Like who wins in the finals? Hurricanes or Vegas? I'd lean more towards the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, and that was kind of the narrative even going into the playoffs. Like it was almost like whatever team when people were talking about it, it was basically every team minus Florida. It was whatever other team from 1 through 7 made it to the finals. Pretty much everybody thought that they were going to have the advantage over whatever team made it out of the West.
So,
and I was kind of on that wagon because I was like, man, you know, you just think about it. Like the only team that you could confidently say going in, like, oh, if they're in the cup final, it's their year, they're winning, is Edmonton.
Yeah. And
that's just because they had everything going right for them. But, you know, you saw it against Vegas. It was, they relied too much on McDavid and Draisaitl. Draisaitl really cooled off in the later half of the Vegas series. And if he wasn't on it, they had nothing.
Yeah.
And so it's like you can't expect 2 players to win you the cup. And then, you know, other teams like Seattle, it was a cool story. No way you could say, they would beat any team in the East. Colorado, I mean, maybe, but
I think they could. Colorado or Seattle, but I wouldn't say they would be the favorite in like any of those.
Yeah, I think I think pretty much every team over in the West just was getting beat up too much. Like Vegas actually managed to come through pretty healthy. But like every other team, you could just see injuries and guys out of the lineup. Like Vegas managed to stay relatively healthy, which I think gives them a better chance than any other team could, should they have continued on to go to the Cup final.
Right. I was surprised. I mean, I guess surprised isn't the right word because of what Boston did in the regular season. But I was shocked that so many people were writing Florida off so hard because people love talking about the President's Trophy curse. Yeah. And it's weird that I brought that up because I'm actually not talking about Boston having it. I'm talking about how a lot of teams, after they win the President's Trophy, in the next 2-3 years, end up winning the Cup.
Quite a few teams, it's been the following year. I think it was Washington, Tampa,
Colorado.
I
think Chicago won at least won the same year
Probably had
that
to.
they won it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot of teams, the regular season success for over 82 games isn't exactly a fluke.
Yeah, and it's even crazier when it's like, and it's tough because you could never expect, what Montour has done for Florida this year. Like he's really just become a beast. But even going back to last offseason, it's like they traded I think at the time was their best player overall in Jonathan Huberdeau.
What did he have? 115 points?
115, and Mackenzie Weegar, who I would say was their best defenseman. Like I know Ekblad's very good, but he's also very injury prone.
At the very least, he's in the conversation.
Yeah. So it's like basically you trade your best forward and your best defenseman. And then the following year now, you're in the Cup final led by the one player you got back in that deal. Like it's a trade that shouldn't have worked out as well for Florida as it has, but it's like Kachuk's really like that's his team almost now. Like even though Barkov's got the C, like it feels like it's Matthew Kachuk's
Sometimes
team.
I forget Barkov's even there. Like it is so the Matthew Kachuk show right now.
Yeah.
I assume I've told this story too at some point. But for people who haven't heard the story, the night where the Flames and the Panthers made that blockbuster trade the last offseason, I was at my buddy's house and we were having some drinks, and I was probably like 5 or 6 drinks in, and I'm not a heavy drinker, so I was getting up there. And I remember getting a text from one of my buddies and then like checking and like seeing this trade, and I'm like looking around, I'm like, am I way more drunk than I realize, or like is this real? I was like, there's no way. That is so ludicrous. Calgary holds none of the cards. I wouldn't expect them to be able to get Huberdeau for Kachuk straight up, less alone adding Weegar and what, they got a prospect and a pick or something too.
They got a first round pick in 2025. And then Cole Schwitt, I think was his name. He's playing with the Wranglers right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember that because
that's masterclass by Treliving. Regardless of how it turns out, at the time, like taking into context, it looked phenomenal.
And not only that, he was able to get Huberdeau and Weegar locked in after that.
Yeah.
Like he got them in, so it's like because at the time it was like, well, I don't know if Calgary won because like Huberdeau and Weegar could play one season then dip, but like he got them both locked in. And I remember when that trade happened because I was thinking, because the very first thing that just popped up was just that it's confirmed that Kachuk has been traded to Florida. I was like, okay, so I was thinking like, what could the return be? I was thinking it'd be like maybe something like Lundell, Sam Reinhart, a first, and something else. And I thought, probably have to be something like that.
Honestly,
and then all of a sudden I see Huberdeau, and I'm like, okay, fuck. So is it like Huberdeau for Kachuk 1-for-1?
That's what.
And then all of a sudden I see Weegar, and I'm like, holy shit, okay, so Calgary actually got a decent return. And then you throw a first in there, it's like you thought Calgary hit a home run there. Like
I would have expected like Mackenzie Weegar and a first, or like Lundell and a first, and like that's it. Because the Flames' hands were absolutely tied.
Right.
Everyone knew that Kachuk wanted out.
And it was only
you got to get something for him.
And it was also Kachuk wanted out. But there's only like 3 teams he wanted to play for.
Yeah, it was like Florida, St. Louis, and
I don't even know the other one.
Yeah, I don't know where else.
I can't remember.
Probably the Rangers or something, but like
he wanted to go somewhere.
His hands were insanely tied. It's wild he got what he did.
Yeah.
So congrats to him on the new job in Toronto.
Yeah, and that one's weird because like a lot of people are like, oh, he gets a lot of unfair criticism, but like he has made some he made some great moves with Calgary, and some didn't pan out, but it's like at the time they looked like phenomenal moves he made.
Yeah. And I'm very interested to see what Calgary can do with a not old style coach anymore.
Yeah, they got
the Sutter system.
Yeah, and I give credit to Calgary for building within, going with Conroy as their GM, and I think they're looking at one of their assistant coaches that was there with Sutter for the head coach job, or their AHL head coach. And I hope they do something. Like I really hope they just go full, like all in on growing and building from within.
Yeah.
Because like I see a lot of talks of like, oh, they're looking at this guy is coaching. It's like, especially Gerard Gallant. It's like, at what point does the NHL move away from just recycling the same coaches over and over?
It is
like you see the same coach just bounce from team to team to team, and it's like, hey, if he can't get it done anywhere else, why is he going to make it work here?
Yeah, it's an incredibly incestuous league. There's 40 general managers who can general manage in the NHL, and there's 32 jobs, and whether that be coaches or GMs, and they just play musical chairs with it. One hops out, and then the other guy jumps in, and then they wait a bit, and then he gets back in there. Like,
yeah,
and then,
it's just a constant cycle that never ends. It seems.
And then eventually, if you've done it long enough and you don't feel like it anymore, you pull a Kyle Dubas or a Barry Trotz, and you move up. And because Kyle Dubas just got picked up by Pittsburgh to be the president of Hockey Ops?
Yeah, he's not even GM. He's president of Hockey Ops. So he's exactly what Brendan Shanahan is over in.
He didn't like how Shanahan
Toronto
was doing it, so he's going to go do it himself with Crosby.
Yeah, and now Barry Trotz is now officially in as Nashville's GM because David Poyle.
He is
finally
GM.
out. Yeah.
He's
so
probably
it was announced during the season, and they made it sound like it was a move that's happening right now. But Poyle finished out the season with Nashville, and now Barry Trotz is in. Yeah. So now he can work with the team this offseason and build the team in whatever vision he sees fit.
Nashville also just signed Andrew Brunette, didn't they?
Yeah, that was a greasy move because that came out of nowhere. Because I saw that Andrew Brunette got hired, and I was like they've already got a coach in John Hines, and it happened like it all came out in the same thing.
Yeah,
it was like John Hines fired, Brunette hired. It's like, damn, like so they already had their guy picked out, ready to
not mess around.
Like, yeah,
like he goes hard with what he does.
It's got to be tough for Hines. Like, you think you got the job, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, you're done, and all of a sudden your replacement's like he's looking in right after you.
He probably saw it coming a bit.
Must have.
Whenever a new GM comes in, a lot of them like to, let's get rid of the old guys. I'll bring in my guys, and my team will do the work.
And I'm happy that Brunette has another chance because I thought he did really good.
I was so shocked
Florida last year.
He just went the whole year without a job.
No, he was assistant coach with the Devils.
Oh, okay. But
it's like, and I've never been a big fan of Hines. Like, even when he was with New Jersey, I wasn't a fan. But with Nashville, because they were right in there in the playoff mix for the final spot,
and they sold at the deadline.
And that was also with Roman Josi going out injured, Philip Forsberg, Ryan Johansson, and Matt Duchene. Like, all their big players were gone. It was like they were out. It
was a borderline AHL team, and
they went on they went on an incredible run. It's like, man, like, you have one of those guys in the lineup, and they don't got injured for however long it was at the end of the regular season. You're probably in the playoffs. And so, I give Hines a lot of credit for what he did with that team coming down the stretch in a really tough spot. Like, he did a good job, and it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if he finds a job somewhere else necessarily as a head coach. Probably only somewhere as an assistant coach or maybe even the AHL. But
like we said, the league loves to recycle the same guys. I'm sure he'll find somewhere to be signed on to something.
Yeah. I think that kind of wraps up.
I have no idea how we're doing for time, but it feels like that was a pretty good chunk.
Yeah, I think we kind of covered it. So I think our official prediction is going with the Florida Panthers in 6 games. And I don't think we've necessarily worked out the time frame we want for how often we want to upload episodes and whatnot, but I think we'll kind of hammer that out and get more on a little bit of a schedule here.
Yeah, I think we're hoping once things settle in and we get more used to it, we'll probably be doing about once a week at least.
At the very minimum.
At the least, we'd like to do once a week. And we'll go from there.
Yeah.
All right.
I agree.
Excellent pilot episode.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. Thank you to everyone for listening, and we will see you guys in the next one.